Let's start that over. All right, everyone, it's 6 o'clock. Welcome everyone to our New Jersey Cannabis Training Academy live Q&A webinars. As always, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We'd like to kick these things off with any celebrations or wins. So the chat is now open. Feel free to drop in where you're dialing from. Feel free to drop in what you're excited about when you think about this industry. We'd love to talk to you in the chat. You can also ask your questions in the chat. So feel free to come in and let us know where you are dialing in from. I'm excited because we have a super dope conversation, one we've touched on briefly, but not in this full way. And we're going to be talking about level 8 environmental impact with our instructor and special guest, Tim Wiegand. But before we start, we're just going to go through some housekeeping just to get everyone settled and let you know how this conversation is going to take place. So again, if this is your first time with us, welcome. That means you are getting through the CTA program, knocking out levels 1 through 7, hopefully, therefore making your way to level 8. And if you're not quite at level 8 yet and you're just joining the conversation for some more information, that's completely fine. We have your questions. We know that embarking on a cannabis journey or, entering the licensing phase can be pretty challenging, hence why the CTA was created. So this is a platform to really help you through that process, help you navigate some of the challenges that we've seen through the application process with real life experts, and help you kind of like find what lane you're looking for. The cannabis industry is broad and wide, and there's so many things you can do all within a complex regulatory system, but it's doable. So we're committed to helping you get your application to the finish line so you can do that. So here's how this Q&A will work. In a moment, I'll have Tim introduce himself, give you guys some background on how he started the industry. And Tim actually has a really dope story that I hope you share in full, Tim, because it's not a lot of people can say they've been through what he's been through and kind of seen our industry from beginning to where it is now. So I think that perspective will be super dope. After that, we'll get through some of the pre-submitted questions we've gotten from earlier. You can also drop your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. We'll definitely read those off as the conversations are going. For this, we definitely want to keep the conversation centered on the topic. You guys may have questions about some of the other topics. We can get to those towards the end of the webinar. And I'll also mention some of the upcoming webinars we have at the end. So please keep your questions concise to our topic at hand, but we can possibly get to some others later on. So with that being said, and again, the chat is open. I believe want to make sure everyone can access it. Yes, you sure can. I want to pass it over to you, Tim. Welcome. Thank you again for joining us for your Q&A session about your course. Can you just let us know a little bit about yourself, how you got started in the cannabis industry, and really why your expertise lends to the environmental impact plan section of the application process?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Precious. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate being here and being a part of the BAC and a part of this course. It's been exciting, groundbreaking, and I'm honored. And it's been an excellent experience. I hope it has been for all of our participants as well. So my name is Tim Wiegand. I tell you a little bit about my history, my credentials, my story. Happy to. Started working in the New Jersey cannabis industry in 2012. I was an early hire at Greenleaf Compassion Center and helped them become the first cannabis alternative treatment center to open in New Jersey. My journey to get there really started a few years prior. I had dabbled in the legacy market. My mother was diagnosed with gastrointestinal cancer when I was a sophomore in high school. And even though it was entirely illegal at the time, her doctor recommended that she try cannabis, which led me to having a different type of introduction and view of the plant at a younger age than most. So after my mom passed, I was arrested for a couple of times for minor possession. This created some tough situations for my family and my financials. Looking back now, it makes me recognize how privileged I've been in my life and the need for social equity in this industry to help those most affected by the war on drugs. It's really incredible how far this industry has come, and I'm really grateful that it exists. There's a world of difference from going to a dispensary, talking to a professional who is educated and within a safe, comfortable setting about which variety of options you could have for symptom relief, compared to a cancer patient having to ask their teenager to go out and find them weed and twist them up joints. So, in 2010, I was following the headlines of Governor Corzine signing the original CUMA bill, creating the medical cannabis program. I was graduating college around that time and had worked in a lot of different odd jobs. I had a certification in SEO and was hired as a compliance officer for a vocational school, mostly helping with financial aid and student loans. In 2011, Governor Christie awarded the first 6 ATC licenses, and the day after they announced the license winners, I found a contact list of these awardees online, and I became relentless. I called and emailed every person on that list repeatedly for months until I got a response from each and every one of them. Of the 6 winners, 4 told me to send a resume, 2 gave me an actual interview, and finally, 1, Greenleaf Compassion Center, they offered me an opportunity. And that original opportunity was working as an unpaid intern for almost a year, doing web design work and receptionist duties from my house. The dispensary was not open yet, so calls were being forwarded to my cell phone, and my first task was contacting the 2,000 patients that were already signed up and registered for the New Jersey Cannabis Program, some of whom were already waiting for nearly a year after sign up to legally purchase cannabis. And I had to call these 2,000 people and let them know that we were tentatively planning on opening in another 6 to 9 months. It was a very hard thing to do. It led to a lot of difficult conversations. And once we did open, I would drive almost 2 hours from Toms River, where I'm originally from, to Montclair, where their dispensary was located, and eventually to Sussex County to help with their cultivation operation. So, I really like to emphasize that it was my experience working in compliance at the vocational school, along with having strong computer skills that qualified me for the job. And it was my persistence and my willingness that ultimately led me to getting hired full time. Things are very different now than they were, 12, 13 years ago. But the fact remains that if you're trying to break into the cannabis industry, the best way is to demonstrate cross applicable professional skills and make the most out of whatever opportunity is given you. So I worked my way into a management position with Greenleaf, splitting my time between their cultivation and dispensary before leaving in 2015 for Compassionate Care Foundation, which was another vertically integrated original nonprofit ATC located in South Jersey. And I spent the next 7 years at CCF. About halfway through, the company converted to a for-profit organization and was acquired by Acreage Holdings, which is a large multi-state operator cannabis company. I became the New Jersey Senior Director of Operations for Acreage, overseeing 3 dispensary locations, manufacturing, processing, cultivation, wholesale, and home delivery operations. I am a certified PMP from the Project Management Institute, and I was project lead for the build out of our original manufacturing lab, 2 new dispensaries, a 30,000 square foot increase to canopy at their Egg Harbor location, and a 150,000 square foot greenhouse renovation. I was also responsible for bringing all of these to market, overseeing their continued operations. So in 2017, I helped establish MMJ Pain Management, which is a physician's practice specializing in medical cannabis recommendations and assisting patients to enroll in the New Jersey Cannabis Program. They are still operational today. They serve over 3,000 patients annually. In 2018, I was recognized as part of New Jersey's Cannabis Insider Top 100 Power List. That same year, I met Sarah Trent through a mutual friend and industry consultant who recommended me to Sarah to help her with the 2019 dispensary RFA, which, with Sarah, we ended up scoring #1 in that competitive round of applications. And it took a little while to come into fruition. The Valley Wellness opened our doors in October of 2013 in Raritan, New Jersey, to begin serving medical patients. I transitioned to my current role, serving as Chief Operating Officer for Valley Wellness. We started adult use recreational sales in April of 2024. And we've been awarded our cultivation license, and we are beginning construction on a new cultivation facility in Somerset, New Jersey. I've also been awarded my own Class 2 manufacturing license, where I look forward to bringing that online over the next few months as well. And that really brings it back here to this course, because I've seen and done a lot in the industry. What I've really learned, is and what's really important to me on a personal level is environmental sustainability. And, I've learned that our industry can definitely improve upon that. There is a false notion and misconception, I think, within our industry that because we deal with plants, we are somehow green. And our industry can be much more green and environmentally friendly and sustainable. So, I'm happy to partake in this course. It does, have a meaningful impact, I think, and I'm super excited about it. So, um,
Man, I can't wait to dive into of course, the environmental plan. But half of me wants to just talk about your journey because it's completely spectacular and it's one that I don't hear of often. For students in a room, you always hear, get a license, be an entrepreneur, just get into the cannabis industry. But like Tim is an example of how you've worked the industry,
work the
right? You've
ladder.
been in
Yeah,
every position from all the way from entry level to C-suite and then entering into that ownership level, which gives you just, I don't know how much more well-rounded perspective one can have with that journey. And I just think it's incredible. It's one that I wish more people would consider and learn and look to be a part of things that exist already and then branch off into ownership. Because the information there is just unmatched. And you were there from medical days before recreational. So you can use that knowledge and I'm sure there are still hiccups, but there's a lot I'm sure that you saved in mishaps from just like the information you had working with the earlier larger ATCs.
sure. Oh, 100%. And really anyone that is looking to be a cannabis owner, if they have the ability, they should just go get an entry-level job at, any cannabis operation that they can, just to start to, see the inside of one of these machines and how they work. And, that we all follow very similar, we all do things in our own way, but we all follow similar SOPs and processes. We all have to meet the same regulations and standards. So any kind of insider experience that you could get, even at an entry level, is gonna pay off tenfold once you reach that C-suite or ownership level when you're a leader amongst the company.
Yeah, that's dope. And I think Tim, we're gonna drop your LinkedIn in the chat just in case
Sure.
anybody wants to kind of like look you up, see what you guys. Shout out to Sarah Trent and Valley Wellness. You guys kill it.
Mhm.
Top tier operation, which we're gonna dive into, but environmental impact. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's the part that people sleep on. They look at it as an afterthought when they're putting together their application. So let's talk about the environmental impact plan. Why is it a critical component for the cannabis licensing process? And what should folks be thinking about when they first face the environmental impact plan, um, to put pen to paper?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree, where I think a lot of people approach the environmental impact plan as a box that they need to check off and a piece of criteria for them to just to meet. And it should be much more than that. It's really, it's critical, and it's a part of the licensing plan overall, because businesses need to operate responsibly and sustainably.
Yeah.
It's crucial to maintaining public trust and fostering a sustainable industry long term. So, that's really why we have this. Um, the some of the stats, and I don't want to rehash the things that we put into the presentation, but just the amount of packaging waste that is produced by our business, the power demands that our business calls for, they're really staggering. And for us to be able to rein this in and to take the lead with environmental sustainability, like it's up to the operators, and there's nothing holding us back to it. So having this plan is really fundamental.
Yeah. And when you're looking at the plan, well, let's section it off. Let's talk about cultivation, manufacturing first, and then get into retail, delivery, so on. What are some of the environmental aspects you're looking to think about, implement, or should be thinking about when you're crafting an application, let's say for cultivation and manufacturing, which, when I'm sure you're at the cultivation facility, like you say, you're using a lot of power, using a lot of water. there's waste there. How can people start to formulate their plans for how they will mitigate some of those environmental impacts?
Yeah, I think like four big factors to really think about are sustainable packaging, uh, reducing exposure to VOCs, volatile organic compounds, those particles in the air. We need to have air filters, within the facility.
Mhm,
Emission reduction plans, renewable energy, they kind of go hand in hand,
mhm,
and water conservation and purification. So,
mhm.
those are really the top level bare minimum things that we should be addressing in a environmental impact plan. Your four bullet points right there: packaging, VOCs, renewable energy, water conservation.
Okay. And what about on the retail side? Where are you seeing some environmental impacts happen, and what can you write in your application to mitigate some of those? Because I'm trying to think to myself on a retail front, because you're not necessarily having the plants there and all of that. What are you kind of looking
Significantly
for?
less. Yeah, it's a much more toned down environment plan for a retail. Retail doesn't have the same type of demands that
Mhm.
manufacturing or cultivation has. So, we're talking about general office type of sustainability practices. You could have a recycling plan that you implement.
Yeah.
You could be, still have environmental controls where you have set thermostats, a smart thermostat, smart lighting, so that lights go out. They're a motion sensor. They go out when you walk out of the room. You're not wasting lighting. You could have smart toilets and smart sinks that for water conservation, and partake with I think a big thing is choosing vendors that also share your goals and are promoting environmental sustainable practices. So, if you don't agree, with the thick cardboard packaging with tons of labels on it that you can't recycle, and that like that comes in styrofoam like that, don't partner with the vendor that packages their stuff in styrofoam. Partner with the vendor that packages with recyclable packaging. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And then on the cultivation and manufacturing side, when you're putting your plan together, you just mentioned vendors. How do you, because again, like same thing when I looked at an environmental plan, I didn't know where to begin. Like I know about recycling, I know about little efforts of sustainability that I use in general for my daily life. Who are these vendors that you're reaching out to? Is this something that you want to hire someone if you're not that privy to environmental and sustainability rules and laws? Or is this something like you can kind of like really open the notebook, research, learn, and implement yourself?
yeah, it does take a little bit of research, but it's definitely possible for the average person to be able to accomplish it. There are a lot of resources out there, for somebody to find sustainable vendors and partners to work with. So, and with cultivators, you're going to be working with contractors, you're going to be working with suppliers, you're going to be working with people that provide services for you, your pest control people or whatever it might be. So you should have a criteria checklist, that you're trying to match vendors off of, when you're selecting them, not just for environmental sustainability, but for a
Mhm.
wide scope of vendor selection criteria. But with a lot people that are or companies that are environmentally sustainable, they tend to promote it. It will be on their website. They will have different certifications that they can show for it. You can reach out to groups like LEED for contractors, that these people are LEED certified contractors, have been trained on environmental sustainable practices. And we're talking about like architects and engineers, and even the people doing, the building contractor themselves, the people doing the labor, plumbers. They can get these LEED certifications that will show that they are environmentally sustainable or have been trained in these practices. Suppliers, you want to make sure that they're using like EPA rated equipment, and you can work with, the New Jersey Clean Energy Program, which is a fantastic resource for
Yeah.
finding, vendors, and the matching you up with different partners that are environmentally sustainable. So, And then there are a few other resources as well. The Jersey Friendly Yards. They are a New Jersey specific environmental group, not for cannabis, but just for businesses in general to help them become sustainable. And the Sustainable Cannabis Coalition, which that's a nationwide group that promotes best practices for the industry. Another fantastic resource, great website. If you're just looking for ideas that, I mean, some of them are more or less, more feasible than others to be able to implement for the average operator, but there's a lot of great ideas and options that they'll present for you. So.
I mean, that just kind of like answered it there for me because those are wonderful resources. And I was going to get to the things that New Jersey has to offer. So, like you're saying, there are programs within the state and even probably nationwide that you can use to create your environmental plan or find folks who are associated with these programs. So, you know that they have some level of sustainability or level of understanding of sustainability before you contract them to do your work. That seems like a great idea to do. If everyone's on that part. So let's talk about on the cultivation side, some techniques for energy efficiency when we think about water management and waste disposal. Just
Yeah.
high level, what are a few protocols that people should think or have you seen take place at cultivations that just make it a lot more sustainable?
A big thing that I've really seen a change and transition over the last 5 years or so is people switching from traditional halide and metal ceramic lights to using LED lighting systems.
Mhm,
The LED technology has improved tremendously over the
mhm,
last decade or so, and the arguably better results now than traditional lighting sources, and they use a fraction of the electricity as well.
mhm,
So switching to LED lighting systems, that consume less energy than traditional lighting systems has been one of the best energy efficient practices that I've seen implemented. And the New Jersey Clean Energy Program has rebates and incentives available for people that are buying lighting systems. I mean, you can get, yeah, like almost like 80%, like crazy amounts of the cost of the purchase for these lighting systems off by choosing the right lighting systems. So there are some fantastic options out there for really offsetting your costs and getting brand new top of the line lighting systems from the new working with the New Jersey Clean Energy Program. As a rebate, you can get large portions of that reimbursed to you. Same thing with HVAC systems. If you get certain EPA rated HVAC systems, the New Jersey Clean Energy Program offers rebates for that. HVAC systems have also really improved, changed over the last, the cannabis HVAC system, I should say. We have now migrated, large, operators have now migrated to these giant closed loop systems where you have an outdoor chiller, it's just like a shipping container sitting outside of your facility and, a loop that brings water around to every single, grow room from that shipping container.
yeah.
And it's a really efficient system, but it is overkill for a lot of operators that can get away with small package units that have great EPA star ratings and can be largely reimbursed through rebates via the New Jersey Clean Energy Program. So and they'll also match you up with contractors that are qualified to install these. So HVAC, lighting, energy efficient, pumps and machinery throughout the building, whatever you can, make sure, it is EPA star rated, toilet fixtures, bathroom, all that kind of stuff. And, for cultivators specifically, I mean, a integrated environmental control system is something that is, really, you know, necessary. It's crucial to be able to, tune in your energy efficiency practices. So I'm talking about like Argus or GrowLink or Trollmaster. These are different examples of environmental control systems that are fully integrated. They can control your lights, your HVAC. If you have,
Mm,
window lifts, ceiling lifts to vent, vent lifts for your building, they can control that. They'll control your watering, to make sure that, they're tapped into your drip irrigation system.
yeah.
So that, and it will provide you a bunch of reporting as well. So as the owner of the company, you can just learn how to use that software system and print out your reports, and that every room is in the sweet spot, that you don't have any highs or lows, lows and the carrying throughout the room that need to be addressed, and that every plant has been watered appropriately, and
Hmm.
that your lighting is at the right percentages that it's supposed to be at. So these integrated control systems, they are really powerful tools that should be implemented and used at the environmental, at every, like I said, a dispensary should have a environmental control system, but I'm talking about like an Amazon smart thermostat, that compared to a professional cultivation system like Argus or GrowLink for for a cultivator. So
That's a lot of good information because like one of the things I'm taking away is that there's incentives to being environmentally sound, to having environmentally sound operations in your cultivation, via rebates or so on and so forth. So there's a level of cost savings that happens when you do the research and you find and you work with environmentally friendly service providers or products that one can find. And I hope everybody heard that because that's like where my ticker blinks, because you are spending a lot of money, especially when you're building a cultivation from the ground up with things like HVAC, plumbing, so on and so forth. So if you can curb costs because you're also being environmentally sound, that sounds like a win-win. So those incentive programs are pretty real.
yeah, incentive programs are big, the real big incentive for people looking at that bottom line dollar cost opportunity. I think like the biggest incentive, for somebody to be environmentally sustainable is, sustainable businesses, they benefit from improved public perception and lowering operating costs in the long run due to reduced energy and water usage. So even though there is an upfront cost, that you'll get back through rebates and these incentive programs that we're talking about,
Mhm.
but long term, your operating costs are truly going to be lower because you have better energy and water usage.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. When writing the application, we know that these sections are either all the points or no points, right? At all. Um, what what usually trips people up that they receive no points on the environmental impact plan section of their application? And then a second question is, when having to navigate the local space, have you seen or heard local municipalities make you add or do something or have to have these sort of sustainability practices as a mandate rather than an option? So like twofold question there.
Well, from my experiences, the local townships, municipalities will ask for, basically everything that you're submitting to the state.
Hmm.
So, as a part of that, yes, I mean, I have had to submit my environmental impact plan to, multiple townships now, and it's the same plan that we provided to the state. And that's the best way of doing that, to make sure that you're not telling two people two different things, and
Hmm.
try to keep things as consistent as possible. um I have not seen townships ask for anything you know out of the ordinary, in addition to what the state has asked for. I've
Hmm.
seen the township say no, where a part of our plan was to do rainwater recycling, and that was not permitted by the township. I don't know
Mm.
why, but that was a part of the plan. So we had to go back and update that we would not recycle our rainwater. So and townships, they'll take particular interest in like wastewater runoff and
Hmm.
like water discharge,
Hmm.
which is environmental plan adjacent, but not necessarily, it's more, those are more part of your regular operating plans.
Yeah.
You know, with the state not giving you, credit for the answer, I think that really comes down to people just really not addressing, the question, and, the hitting on those big four topics that we had talked about in the beginning: sustainable
Hmm.
packaging, VOCs, renewable energy, and water conservation. I think that as long as you have, a paragraph for each one of those on how you're going to address it, that you should receive credit for, credit for the question. And that, you don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to make promises that you can't keep. You know, if I mean, I haven't seen it, but I would imagine that, if your environmental plan called for, putting in, like a solar panel system, and, a backup generator, and, a bunch of, items like top of the line HVAC, and you don't have the finance means for all of this, if it doesn't align with your other plans, I could see that being a red flag. So, I think that as long as you're addressing all of the main criteria of the question, and that the plan aligns with the other plans that you're submitting, that you should get full credit for it. And, and generally write out the, who is going to be in charge of the plan. What milestones are you going to have for the plan? How are you going to go back and make sure that the plan is actually working?
Hmm.
I think that those are major criteria points of any plan that need to be addressed, with what we're doing here. So, that's the answer, is, make sure you're not, overextending yourself, that it aligns with all your other plans, that to address the four big criteria points of this specific question, and then to have the follow through that you need to have for any type of plan. Who's in charge, milestones, how are you checking this? um, so
And in the cultivation, who is in charge? I guess depending on the team and how big your cultivation is, do you need to set someone specifically and that's their job title, or can this fold into somebody's jobs at the cultivation level, cultivation manufacturing level?
Yeah, both. I mean, one, yes, you need to set somebody specifically that this is, they are accountable for this, but it could also absolutely fold within somebody else's job title, whether
Okay.
it's your master grower, if you're using that term, your operations manager, you're the CEO of the company, if you want to put that. I mean, depends how big the company is. A large, MSO with multiple locations is going to treat this differently than a, small startup independent, cultivator that has, a micro business with 5 employees. Yeah. So if
Hmm.
you're the micro business with 5 employees, then it's going to be, your top guy or you doing this.
Yeah. Hmm.
If you're, a much larger company, then, I mean, at the MSO that I previously worked for, we had a compliance officer that, this was a large part of their job, but they also handled, a few other compliance aspects. So,
Yeah. Nice. Thanks for that. And I'm just reiterating, because for a lot of our students that are starting, you think we talked about hiring recently. So go back and check out that video we did with workforce creation. But you don't always need to hire 300 people when you're starting off, right? A lot of these roles you as a CEO and owner actually want to do. So before you task it off to somewhere else or before you hire it out, you have the clearest understanding of how it should be done. To sustain your business and your operations and to remain compliant, so you're not receiving any fines or anything like that from your investigators or CRC for not being compliant.
I'd say in general, the owner of the company should have a solid understanding of basically every single job and task that there is within that company. So before you assign it out to somebody, you definitely need to understand this plan, can manage and operate and implement this plan on your own, or at least to spearhead it yourself before you assign it to somebody, because you might have to fire that person, that they
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
quit. It's gonna happen like that. So
Yeah.
you really
Yeah.
got to be
It
able
is.
to pick up the reins at any moment. And if we have independent operators or soon to be operators a part of this, like that, it's an all hands on, like it's you doing it all. You got to wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah. Nice. So I want to talk about a little bit about a term I hear, nuisance mitigation plan, which sometimes fall underneath the environmental plan, perhaps. And maybe this is more on the retail side. I've seen some municipalities ask for plans around maybe traffic congestion, ask for plans around maybe, smoking or smoking around the property, ask for like noise nuisance mitigation. Do these topics kind of fall under environmental impact plan?
I would say noise mitigation, 100%, and that's actually
Mhm.
something. Great example there. That's something that Egg Harbor Township had asked me for, which was separate. I did not need to include that to the package that I had originally presented to the CRC. So
Mhm.
yeah, noise mitigation. I said that I would install soundproofing, pads and uh, to noise reduction pads that you
Mhm.
can install around the warehouse, that the times, reiterate the times that you're going to be operational, and loud machinery that you might be using. I actually measured the decibel level of all the different types of machinery
Wow.
that we would be using, and if and look up the township codes, and make sure that when you're at, I think with Egg Harbor Township, yeah, it's a certain level that will be measured at the edge of the property. So based upon where I am standing, the decibel level is, X amount. When you get to the edge of the property, I'm sure that it will be, fine. So I could see some townships, depending on what you're doing, of course. If you're a, large manufacturing facility, they might be a little more interested in, or concerned about, the types of machinery that you're going to be using. HVAC machinery can be loud as well for cultivators. So noise mitigation, I would absolutely include as a part of the environmental impact plan. The CRC did not ask for anything a part of that, but the township might.
Yeah.
Um, Nuisance mitigation, as in like loitering, or people smoking
Like
outside
traffic
the building.
congestion, yeah,
Yeah.
smoking, all that
I
stuff.
would, I don't know if I would consider that part of the environmental. It could be, I guess it's all compliance at the end of the day,
Mhm.
and whoever, is overseeing your environmental impact plan, may very likely also be responsible for your nuisance mitigation plan. Valley Wellness, we absolutely have to deal with traffic control concerns.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of our approval plan with the township. They were very concerned that we would not be able to handle the traffic flow that comes into our dispensary. And it's like it's hard sometimes. Like, I'm glad that we do have a plan in place, and that we have these procedures, and that we've taken a lot of time to think out how we handle these occurrences when traffic becomes very heavy at our dispensary. So I think that ends up more in the general operational umbrella.
Mhm.
But it's definitely something that you may, as a retail, even as a cultivator or manufacturer, the township is going to be very interested in the amount of employees that you have working there, the amount of deliveries that you're expected to be having there on a regular basis. Because if traffic is going to be increased because of your operation, that they might deny your location because of that. That the surrounding area can't support it, or they're going to ask you to make modifications to the traffic circle that you sit at in order to be approved. And now, this location that you had all lined up and thought was perfect is, becoming an astronomical expense if you want to keep it, because you need to, make changes to the, to the sidewalk, to the entry to the building that you are leasing. That, so there are, yeah, definitely concerns. I don't know if I would, have it fall underneath the environmental plan umbrella. It does not need to be included in the plan that you submitted to the CRC, but
Okay.
it's definitely a concern that you may have to face, with, township approval. And even nuisance people smoking. I mean, the township was very concerned, how we would handle these things. It doesn't fall, this is part of our operating plans, where we have security presence outside, cameras, security plans, that type of stuff. So,
Okay. Nice. I have two more questions for you because we're gonna wrap up and you're answering all these questions for me. And I'm actually learning a lot about the environmental side because it does seem like, again, we talked about how it may be the afterthought, but there's the part that can actually save you money in the long run and then also make you a good business citizen for your community, which I know is super important for the townships that are especially skeptical at first but welcome you in. You want to show that you're a good partner through and through. So, in terms of tracking all of these methodologies that you'll implement for your environmental impact plan, number one, what is the best way to track, that your systems are working and they are actually energy saving? And how do you prepare for any audits probably related to your environmental strategies and impact plans?
yeah. Well, you should be doing your own internal audits on a routine basis. So, make it a part of your, quarterly or annual checklist, where you are, walking through, buy a energy gun that you can do a scan of your building, and it can actually give you, spots, energy deficient spots in your building where heat might be escaping. The environmental integrated control systems that I talked about, Argus, GrowLink, Trollmaster, they offer fantastic reporting features, that you can really, dive into the metrics with those, and you can see that we have, a our runoff for waste, for water waste is at like 5%. Let's tune that down to 2%. And you can set standards, that, and really tangible milestones that you can work towards to make sure that you are giving your plants the optimal watering levels. Those are, that your lights aren't, pushing past like 90% in their, in their power source, that there's a sweet spot for your lights that they should be operating at. So, there are some really tangible metrics, using those environmental integrated controls that you can set. And, circling back with your, checklist, your routine internal audits. So this way, if the, CRC or anybody for that matter, did want to, you know, perform an actual audit, that you guys, would be ready for it, and you could actually, take the lead at that point. This is what we do when we do our own internal audits. Like that's what I love doing when the CRC comes and they ask me a question, and I'm one step ahead of you. Here's my SOP for this, and this is how we
Mm-hmm.
perform it. And they eat that up. It works really
Yeah.
well. It keeps a great relationship with your monitors that way. So that's how I would
Nice.
recommend, yeah, handling
Nice.
those.
Great. Actually, we have a question here in the chat. But I do want to say something that's super important. You are going to get visited by your CRC inspectors and monitors to
Yeah.
make sure you are keeping up with their SOPs. It's not just something you're writing in the application and then forgetting it's there. Like what you put in your application is what you say you will do and what you have to show you're doing. So even on this environmental side, I would encourage everybody to really be thoughtful about some of the resources that Tim is providing to see how you can implement that and then keep track record of it and show the impact you're making. Another question here in the Q&A box. Do you, is a great question actually. Do you or have you had to interact with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection? When did they come into play around manufacturing or retail, or if they do even come into play um, in the cannabis industry?
Um, So only if there is an issue, basically. I
Mm.
mean, when I was renovating that greenhouse, there were a few issues with that structure. There was a retention pond in the middle of the structure that was like leaking for back. I know there was some seepage going on with the surrounding properties. So there was some remediation that needed to be performed. I've done a handful of fit outs. We've acquired property and had to try to build on an existing warehouse, retrofit it, and when that happens, we're always doing environmental studies to make sure that there is no ground contamination. And if you find that remediation is needed, remediation, if you're going to buy a lot in New Jersey, a commercial lot, I should say, at least in New Jersey, and it's found that there is ground contamination and remediation is required, that falls on the buyer. You won't be able to get a CO until you have that remediation completed. So, you need to do your due diligence beforehand. Before you acquire a property, you have to make sure that the ground is clean there, and do your environmental study. And if it comes back dirty, you got to do phase 2 studies. And we're talking about a few thousand to tens of thousands of dollars that you need to do in due diligence and environmental studies to make sure that you're not going to run into issues once you acquire the property. And as long as you do this due diligence, then you can actually push it back onto the seller and use, if the ground is dirty and you need to, and this is when the EPA gets involved, that if the ground is dirty and you need to report it to these guys, and you can be, if somebody else, this is all public information, if somebody else had done this previously, a previous potential buyer, you can go to the EPA, you can request these studies, you can get this information available to you. But if you do the due diligence, then you go to the seller and you work this into negotiating the price for the property. So that's one aspect. And then EPA star ratings. You can actually get a EPA star rating for your facility. If you are an operating business, any business can do a EPA star rating and see how efficient their business is. The New Jersey Clean Energy Program actually has step-by-step process on how to do this. And they have some incentives that are involved as well for businesses that are rated higher. You qualify for some special stuff with the New Jersey Clean Energy Program. And if you are rated lower, they will help work with you to get your rating higher. So that, again, that's another metric that you can be really working towards, when you are trying to make sure that your environmental impact plan has been successful. We started off at a 2 EPA star rating for our business. We are now at a 5. So that's, pats on the back all around.
That's nice. And this is the New Jersey
Clean energy
renewable.
program. Yeah.
Great. I'm gonna drop that in the chat so that everybody
New Jersey Clean Energy.
clean energy program.
And they will help you do a EPA audit for your business and facility.
Nice.
New construction, currently operating. So that's, all different types of levels that they have.
And one question, final question that I ask all the instructors that tune in is just, what is the advantage of taking your course with the CTA?
Yeah, I mean, to develop a strong foundation of the New Jersey cannabis industry, its rules and regulations, and then for resources within the industry, once you're operating, so you have people to call upon, to ask questions, to do business with. The New Jersey cannabis industry is very click. We love our conferences and our parties, and you go to these things and you see a lot of the same faces again and again, and these are the people that you're going to be reaching out to for a wholesale agreement. These are the people that you're going to be working. Can we do a pop up at your dispensary? Can we get into your store? So you want to be in that circle if you want to really succeed in the industry. And this is a great step in doing that. It's going to give you the education that you need to have a solid foundation of the industry, and it's going to help you start making those connections that you need to succeed once you're operating.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for that, Tim, and all the information and your background and just the wealth of knowledge that you have around this topic is why we brought you on as an instructor. Is just it's super important. Like there's no part of the application I think that is more important than others, in my opinion. I think the whole gambit, you have to approach it with a fine-tuned comb and go through each section. And you learn a lot from your application. Like you learn a lot from these practices, and not just for this business, but I feel like application cannabis teaches you about so many other things if you have other business aspirations and so on and so forth. But again, Tim, thank you guys for your time. Thank you everyone who joined us today for our Q&A. Make sure you stick around with us on Thursday. We are going to have our financial forecasting Q&A. I know a lot of you guys are interested in talking about money, how to raise money, how to raise capital, how to write a pro forma, how to track your profits, how to do taxes, all that stuff we're going to talk about in that Q&A coming up. And then the rest of the Q&A schedule will be posted on the portal for you guys to see. So Tim, again, thank you. Can't thank you enough. And salute to you for just being an industry OG. Like it's very few people who really get it out the mud, to be honest, like from all the way entry level to where you are. It's just super inspiring. I'm inspired every time I hear your story. So I appreciate you joining.
I appreciate you guys. Really, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Enjoy your evening.